the tags that we'll be using for HTML. So there's tags and there's attributes, and I'll discuss attributes in just a little bit. But always remember that all of these things in angle brackets, they're all considered tags. So, you know, there's your open HTML tag, and then there's your close HTML tag. So here's open, close tag, open body, close body. So we always refer to those as tags. And it would typically be a set of tags. So you're going to see open and close, open body, open footer, closed footer. So they're referred to as sets. Okay, and and as you can see, well, what's the difference between this header and this header here? Well, this one has a slash there. So this header is an open tag, and since this tag is has a slash there, that means that it's the close tag. So just keep that in mind. One thing that's interesting about this textbook is it actually says backslash, and that's actually not a backslash. You can refer to it as slash or forward slash. So it's not a backslash. Backslash is switched the other way. And actually, I have a way to remember that. If I'm just going to open up a notepad real quick, and I'm just going to create a new file just because I want to illustrate something. So the way I remember is that if you look at this slash here, it kind of looks like the top of it, just think of the top as the head. So if this is a little person, the person is walking forward, so that would be the forward slash. And if you do the other slash or the backslash, it kind of looks like the person's going backward. So the little head is on the top, and it's like they're walking backward by doing this. So that's the backslash, and the other one's the forward slash. At least that's how I, because I know that it can be, it's a bit of a challenge to remember which one's which, but that's the way I do it. Okay, so we have just a regular slash here, forward slash. And when it has a slash, that means that it's the close tag. And you might actually hear me say something like, content is wrapped around tags. And specifically, it's important for me to mention this because when I'm grading your work, I might say something like missing open tag or missing closed tag, or I might say something like it needs to be wrapped around or whatever. But when you have, like, let's say here's the header, the open header and the closed header, those tags are wrapped around this heading tag, the H1 tag. It's wrapped around these body tags. All of this content here is wrapped around body tags. So just be sure to recognize that terminology. Okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, so then we have, it talks about your head tags, and always remember that it will always be right above the body tags. And then we have the other section called the body tags. So here's the head tags, and then there's everything inside that's basically wrapped by the head tags. And then we have the body tags, and everything inside is wrapped by the body tags. Also remember too that there's only going to be one set of head tags, one set of body tags. No more, no less. Okay, then you might have, now we've covered the basic before when we were testing out the software in Lab 1, but now you look here, we're actually adding the header tags and the footer tags. And just like for the head and the body, you only have one set per web page. So it's always going to be, content on the top and then content on the bottom. Just like we talked about last time, the World Wide Web Consortium page, we had, content on the very top, everything that was in blue up on here. And actually, well, that was a specific page. I think it was on accessibility. There we go. Everything in blue up on top here would be in the header. Everything on the bottom here would be considered the footer. So there's only going to be one set of headers and one set of footers, no more. And you could have less. You don't have to have those tags. It's just they just kind of noticed that, so many web pages have a header and a footer. And if you look at any other web pages, you'll see that typically there is a bottom area and then a top area. And a lot of times it is consistent. So even if I were to go to, now this one's blue on the top and this one's, not so much content up there. But if you go to the bottom and it's still not the same. But let's say you go to web security. Okay, now this is similar to the home page. And if you just look at other web pages, you'll notice that there's stuff on the top and stuff on the bottom. And there's a purpose to having consistency. So you saw that there was 2 web pages that had this same content, and then there was one that didn't. Well, there must be a purpose for that, but we're not really going to look at the purpose. Okay, let's see. Okay, so there's header and then there's footer. And I'm hoping that what you see here is, well, can anybody tell me what the problem is here? Like, after what we've already covered, what do you think the problem is here? So you can see here how it's kind of difficult to read because everything's all in the same line. But if we add spacing or indentations, like down here, you see that it's so much easier to read. So here's HTML, here's your head, your body, header, and footer. And you can even add more spacing just so that it's even easier to read. It really just depends on you. Of course, there's things that are common, so indentations are good. But, if it were me, I would probably, even separate this content, hello world, a little bit more to, show that, well, this is the main part of the web page. But it's up to you. Even this would be fine, but yeah, that's fine. Now, notice here that hello world is still on the same level as the header tags and the footer tags. Is that okay? Should that be indented more? Actually, it shouldn't. It would. If it was further inside of something, like let's say it was inside the header tags, then yes, it would be indented. But this hello world here, it's not further inside the body. It's just on the same level as this header and footer. So that's actually okay. It may look like it should, but it's okay. And to tell you the truth, even if you did, I wouldn't take off points, I don't think. But you would still add spacing if you wanted to on the top or the bottom. Okay, inside, not sure where I said inside. Okay, so inside, by saying inside, it would be like inside the body tags. And thank you so much for asking that, because I do want to make sure that you know the terminology. So all this content here, and actually the page is dividing it, so I feel like it's a little confusing. And let me just find something that's not too crazy. And I think everything's crazy here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's just say this is the open body tag, and down on the bottom, here's the closed body tag. And let me just click on it. Basically, when I say inside, it means that it's between these tags, or these tags are wrapping the content inside. So if I say inside the header tags, it would be between the open and close. All this right here is inside the header tags. Good, good, okay. This content here is inside the H1 tags. Good, good. Thank you so much for asking. All right, so let's see. Okay, so this is expanding the code that we already know. We know the HTML, we know the head, we know the body, and then anything inside, but now we're looking at the header tags and the footer tags. Okay. All right, so that's it for that part. Oh, and it says ubiquitous hello world, because as you probably know in Mr. Ortega's class, you probably started off with a program that said hello world, and that's all it did. That's as you see different programming languages, and I know that a lot of you have already taken quite a few classes, but that's just a thing that that people just do to test out programs. It's like, I don't know why, they just kind of started it. Okay, anyway. Okay, so, okay, it's 8:01. I always want to keep track of the time. Okay, so within one number, okay, so within one another, it's called nesting. Okay, so yes, just as we were talking about something being inside, you're nesting content because here's the HTML tags and everything inside. There's stuff inside, but then having head tags and then having stuff inside there, that's actually considered nesting, where you have something and then you have something inside of that, and then something inside of that, and then something inside of something else. That's considered nesting, if you ever run into that term. Okay. Okay, yeah, so basically it was something that we've already covered, is that whenever you make a change, you always want to be sure to save that file and then refresh in your browser. Okay. This section here, it basically talks about the fact that when you create web pages, just like we did in Lab 1 and what we're going to do in Lab 2, just know that you are creating a web page, but you're not creating something that everyone can see. The only people that can see your page is if somebody's looking over your shoulder, or you can actually send your file to somebody and then they can open it in their browser. But it's not a public web page. I mean, there are places where you can go that provide free space available, and I believe Google actually does it. I've always meant to try that, but or maybe I have, but it's been a while. But anyway, there are places where you can put it online for everyone to see, and all you would need to do is send somebody the web address. But at this point, the pages that we're creating here, we can only see it if we have that file, and then whoever opens it up in a browser. So just to kind of straighten that out for you. Okay, and again, when you make changes, you always want to make sure that, okay, so you have your notepad open and possibly you have it on one side, and then you will have the file that you've created in a browser on another side. So what I typically do is have two windows open. I will have the browser on one side, and then I would have the code on another side. So I'm using like a split screen here. I make my changes here and I refresh here. You know, you just keep on going back and forth. And one thing when I was creating, or even now, I just have this thing in my head: save and refresh, save and refresh. And the reason why I do that is that sometimes you might make a change and then you don't realize that you haven't refreshed, and you're like, well, what's the problem? So keep in mind, as soon as you save or as soon as you make a change, you need to make sure to save and then hit refresh. Just make that a thing that you do, because I don't want you to, you know, be stressing out about something that it's not really, there's really nothing wrong with it. Okay, let's see, some tags. Oh yeah, so some tags have, you know, we talked about the slash, and you would have the / on a close tag. And then you have some tags that don't have close tags. For example, so, you know, we talked about if I click on HTML, there's an open and there's a close. Head has an open and a close. Body has open and a close. But one tag that we typically use is the image tag. So img src equals, and then a file name dot, just say it's a picture, file name .jpg, and then close. And actually, typically you would have like a slash and then a close. So that is an image tag. You don't need a close image tag, because you're just saying an image needs to go here and this is the file name and that's it. So just keep that in mind, that not everything has an open and close tag. There's also a tag for a break, BR, but it doesn't have a close tag. And basically all that is to have like just like pressing enter, like if you wanted to go to the next line. Because if you notice, you have whenever, well, I'm not sure, well, within the assignment, lab 1, I only had you have put your name inside of the tags. And let me go ahead and illustrate that real quick. And this is something that you really haven't done. So I just want to clarify real quick. And I am making this into a very basic page. Now, why are there not colors here? I have actual tags, but there's no colors. Why? Well, that's because I haven't saved it yet. So I haven't towed this IDE. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Okay, so I have this IDE, or the software that I create programs with. It will put the colors on the code after I save it. So if I do save as, and then say, well, it needs to be a HTML page. Now we have colors, and now it'll help you out with open and close tags. Okay. Okay, so back to what I was talking about. When we created Lab 1, we tested out a page and it had just text. And so you actually just put your name in there. Yay, it worked. But if you notice, we only had stuff on one line. We didn't put anything on a second line. So what happens when we save that and then we open it up in a browser? Well, it's all on one line. Well, if you wanted to have the content on a second line, you could actually do the BR tag. And this is actually me showing you this. Remember, it's always a good idea to know the old ways of doing stuff, because remember, I talked about the old way of doing fonts, which is with font color and all of that, but we replaced it with CSS that would make it a much easier process. Another old tag is this BR that we're referencing in the text. It basically, like if you were to press enter, you just put BR and it'll put this content on a second line. So if I were to save and then refresh, you can see that it's on a second line. So yes, it's old code, but still it's good for you to know. But it's not really a good practice. We don't really want to use the BR. Now at this point, you can use the BR because, you know, we're learning. So that's completely fine. And actually, I will never take off points if you use a BR. But there are better ways of doing another line, and we'll cover that at another time. So for now, if you wanted to put stuff on a second line, use the BR, that's fine. I'm not going to take off points. All right, so that's a bit about the BR. And remember, again, the whole purpose of that is that some tags only have one line. There's not like an open and close tag. Specifically, the most prominent one would be the image tag that I believe I already got rid of. Yep, got rid of. But it's basically just img src equals something in quotes, or actually the file name. And let's just see what happens when I save and refresh. It gives me this little image, broken image. And basically the reason for that is that the image is not in the folder that I'm working in. But we'll cover images a lot later on. And of course, this image should be indented inside the body. And also know too that there's this level of indentation and then there's another level of indentation. If you were to like press tab twice, that's completely fine. I'm not going to take off points if you have too many tabs. But if you're not indented at all, that's when I'll take points off. Okay, so let's see what's next. So we've already talked about the head tags, and basically the head tags, remember, it's an area on the top of your page that has content, which is typically just information about the page. So you're going to see stuff like meta tags, and the meta tags are basically tags to give information to the search engines to tell them what the content is, or just information about it. There's here's keywords. There's lots of different meta tags, so we definitely won't cover a lot of them, but there are lots of different meta tags you can have. And again, you know, it's just search engines, maybe adding who the author is of your page. You know, it's up to you which ones. Well, probably up to the company that you work for, really. But at this point, it's up to you what you put. But even more within this class, I really don't require the meta tags, except for this lab 2, just so that you just practice using it. Okay, so head tags, content about the page. You also see that the scripts, or like JavaScript or the CSS information, that's always going to be in the head. So we have a script tag, and then we have a closed script. and then the JavaScript will go inside here. So basically information about the page that you're not going to view on the actual home page. This is just stuff that either has action like JavaScript will be in the head. It'll happen in the body. It'll basically display stuff in the body, but you don't want your viewers to see the JavaScript. You don't want your viewers to see CSS or, the meta text, because that's just for other things. One thing that's kind of cool that I like to show people is that if you right click on a web page and do view page source, you can actually see the source of any web page that's out there. So let's look at that W3C page. If you just right click, and of course, if you right click like on a link, you're going to get different options. I don't think this is an image. This might be an image. If you right, no, that's not even an image. That's probably CSS. I believe there was a Twitter image on the bottom. So if you right click it, now you have save image as, so you know that's an image. But if you right click just on some white space and it's not an image or anything else, you can do view page source and you can see the actual source of any web page out there. Of course, it might be a bit challenging to read because, there's lots of content there, but you can kind of see how they're using the div tags. They're using unordered list or list items. We'll look at that later. But what you are familiar with, well, there's that doc type we talked about before. And it's the very first line on the page. Then they have the head tags, or I'm sorry, the HTML tags. They have the head tags. Here's the close head. Here's the open body. And if you go all the way to the bottom, we have your closed body. And I know you can't see this. There we go. Then we have your closed HTML. And, it's possible to have script within a web page, but for the purpose of this class, all the script tags will be in the head. So yeah, that is the HTML code for the W3C web page. And you can see, oh, and here's your image SRC. And it was an image. All right. So, and I know it looks a bit complicated, but we're not going to be doing, everything here. And actually, a lot of the things that you do see here, we will be covering, but of course, we're not going to just throw all that at you. Here's an H3 tag. Okay, but this will make a whole lot more sense, but later on. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back. Okay, so again, the head tags are only for providing information on the page. You'll see meta tags. You'll see script tags. This is where they mention attributes here. Oops. Remember attributes, and where you've seen that before is here. So the attributes, and actually in the code that we were just looking at, we had some sort of tag, like even the body had something inside of it like this. So we can just have a general body tag like we have here, but then there's so much more that you can do in this tag. And one thing that's common and that we'll see later is ID, and then equal, something in quotes. And that's an attribute of the body. And previously, since I have been showing you some older stuff, you might see something like background. Oops, if you spell it right. The background equals, and you would put like an image here, or you could even put like a color here. Now, this one isn't exactly how the code would be, but yeah, there's so many different attributes that you can put on a tag. And that's why in that W3C site, you saw, let me go ahead and show that again. You saw stuff like, okay, here, the body, the ID is this, the class is this. And of course, I'm not gonna go too far on what that is, but just know that there's attributes for any of the tags. Here's a header, it's got an ID, it's got something else. So just know that there's attributes that you can have to kind of, I guess, do something different, or assign maybe a name to a tag, just so you can do stuff with it later on. And of course, we'll discuss that later when we get to CSS. Okay, let's see. Okay, and then of course we have our title tags, and we haven't done that, but I think I've discussed it already. So you have title tags. So inside of your head tags, and actually notice how these script tags are inside of the head. Well, since it's inside of the head tags, it needs to be indented, or it's wrapped around, or the head tags are wrapping that content. That should be indented. In addition to the title tags. The title tags, whatever you put here is on the browser tab. And then you do close title. So if I were to refresh now, and then, I'm sorry, save and refresh. Now you don't really see it because it's way too small. So let me go ahead and expand it a bit. You see on the very top here, the tab, it says whatever you put here is on the tab. And then if you look on the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see the bottom of my screen, but even the web browser icon on the title, no, I forgot what this bar is called, but the bar on the bottom, it actually says whatever you put in that title tag. And also notice that there is nothing that says, or at least it's not saying it up here in the body. It's just saying it on the browser and on this, on the bottom here. So that is the title tag. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so let's see. Okay, also, one thing I also wanted to mention here, notice how I put the title tags in one line. I didn't put title and then indent this and then title and have it indented like that. It's possible to do that, but the reason why I put it in one line is because, and it's commonly found on one line, is because typically you're not going to have something really long up here. You're not going to have that big long sentence that I just wrote. Whatever you put here is on the tab. Typically it would be something really short, like, you know, if you're on the Adobe website, it would just say Adobe, possibly, or, you know, Microsoft. It'll just say Microsoft. Microsoft, and maybe just maybe a little bit more specific, but it's never going to be really long. So it's on one line, and that's completely fine. And again, I'm not sure if I told you this, so I'll just go ahead and, yeah, I think I did. Also remember too, that you can put, you know, everything in one line. You can totally do that. But the problem with that is that it would be hard to read. The only reason why we do indentations and spacing is for, you know, people to read easier. And since you're most likely not the only one that's going to be working on web pages in a company. Okay, so going back to attributes, also notice that, okay, so remember this is a meta tag and this is an attribute of the meta tag. Notice how there's an equal sign and then there's quotes. Very important for you to go ahead to do that. Otherwise, you're going to run into issues if you forget possibly one of the quotes or the equal sign. So just like I've mentioned before, that those little characters are really going to make a lot of difference in the future. So be sure to be very careful with what you type. Be very detail oriented. Oh yeah, and so you will have like an attribute of a tag, and then you will assign what the attribute is. So this meta tag, it's called author. This meta tag up here is called description. So it actually specifies what this meta tag is for. And you'll see a lot of that specifically. Actually, I think I can show you a little bit of CSS. Okay, here we go. I mentioned it with the font tag earlier. Remember the old font tag? We're assigning blue to the color of this text. This is an attribute. So actually, let me go ahead and copy and paste this line, because even though it's old, it will still work. So let's go ahead and refresh, save and refresh. And you see that now I just added blue text. So now I just changed it. Let's not put a different text, just put different text. So we'll save and refresh, and now it says different text in blue. So it still works, but it's just the old way of doing it. And actually, while we're doing HTML now, it's completely fine if you were to use these tags, but the assignment doesn't require them. But just remember, when we get into CSS, cascading style sheets, that's where we're actually going to look at we're actually going to style the text by making it blue or making it italic or making it, styling it however we do. But that would be when we do it up on top here. Okay, but cool stuff. But again, old way of doing it, but it's good that you know it, but you really shouldn't be doing it if you're working for a company. Okay, it also mentions that the keywords are comma separated, and very important there. Now, when you have something in quotes like this, it actually doesn't make a difference what's in there, because quotes basically tell you that it's just text inside of something. It is the content of this meta tag, the keywords of it, and it's separated by commas. But if it's in quotes, it's just something that's like information. It's not code. Okay, so the next part of this section is the body tags. The body tags, the main thing to remember about the body tags is that anything you want the user to see inside of the web page. So anything like, this is the W3C web page. It's squished, but it's still there. Anything that you actually want to see or you want the user to see, it needs to be in the body tags. They don't see, now they do see, like in the title, they have, for the title tags, they have W3C security activity. Now they do see that, but that's on the tab. It's not in the web page here. So anything that you see, it needs to be inside of these body tags, or it needs to be wrapped by these body tags. Okay. All right, so the body tags, you have different areas. Remember, we talked about a header and a footer area. So the header is going to be whatever is on the very top, like this top section here, this part in gray, and the W3. And then the footer is going to be what's down here. And the whole reason for doing that too is that, remember, a lot of things are consistent. So instead of going through every web page, and remember I talked about using that font tag, you would have to go through every web page and every line that you have, 100 web pages, and change that. But we don't want to go in 100 pages and change that. We just want to do it in one place where you can actually have CSS for all of the footers and all of your pages so that they're all consistent and you don't need to do it 100 times for every 100 pages that you have. So it is important to have a header and a footer to not only have an area for the top of your page and an area for the bottom, but for, just being consistent and not doing more work than you have to. Okay, and it also discusses div sections, and that is actually pretty important because you want to have, just like the header and the footer area, you might want areas that should be assigned different code as well. So let's say whatever I have in here, that needs to be a certain color, like let's say div ID equals general. Like this is the general area. So the general area of my web page is always going to be blue. It's always going to be italic or whatever. So in your CSS on top, you're actually going to have the definition of what the general area should look like. So again, and not again, but just I just want to point out that right now it really might not make sense that we're doing div tags, but in the future we'll see that we need them because of the CSS that we'll be creating later. So just keep that in mind, and just know that it's a way to section off stuff. The header and footer. So I've already discussed the header and the footer, and basically the header is the area that's going to be on the very top of your page, and the footer is going to be the area on the very bottom of your page. They basically added it because, so many web pages, specified, well, they just have tops and bottoms, and it makes sense because you look at any web page and you know that there's some sort of title and basically describing, where you are. Then at the very bottom of the web page, you might have, at minimum, just like right here, you might have, copyright information or the author of the page, or maybe an email if there's technical issues, or just a contact me email. So there is typically a header and a footer. So they decided to go ahead and create those specific areas. And let me go ahead and just know that it's not a requirement. Just like we created that very first page with very basic tags, just head, body, and the HTML. So know that you don't have to have the header and footer, but it's just very common and it's helpful too. So one thing I wanted to show you, and earlier I mentioned div tags, so we have a division or some sort of section for certain items or whatever you want within that section. And again, we'll see the purpose of that later. Now, remember, I added, just, gibberish here inside of this, these div tags. Now, if I were to save and refresh that on this web page that I created, notice how it's on the next line. Well, remember when I showed you that the BR puts content on the next line. So if I remove the BR and then I save and refresh, now all that content's on the same line in the web page, although it's on separate lines in the code. But also notice too that I don't have any more BRs in this code. It actually, the div actually allowed or actually added a separate line, or it made the text appear in the second line. So this is actually the better way of doing going to a next line, is to create divs. Now we're actually looking at header. So let's see what happens when we add a header. Okay, so I'm going to make this hello world text inside a header. And of course I want to indent it. Oops, not there. I want to indent it. So now that I put hello world, now on the top here, and also remember too, I added CSS in the head, and whatever you have in the head should not show up on the web page. Well, I mean, it will, just as you see here, but that should not, you should not expect it to show up on the web page. Anything inside the head is not content you want to see on the web page. And basically just having CSS here, that is, that's, you know, there's no purpose to have just text in this area here. So let me go ahead and just remove that right now. Save and refresh. And now it is, not only is that CSS gone, but notice how now the hello world is inside of these header tags, or wrapped. It's wrapped, the hello world's wrapped by the header tags. It is now on a line all by itself. So now there is no need for that BR or break. That's what the BR stands for. So now let's say we wanted this different text to be on a different line, or actually, well, actually these divs here, it's on the bottom of the page. So why don't I just make that into footer tags? So there's footer, and then there's close footer. Oops. Okay. So there's open and close footer. So now let's see. Now it wasn't a div tag, and that's why it showed up on this on another line. What happens when I just change the div into footer? Well, it doesn't make any changes, because although we changed from div to footer, it still does the same thing. It's really just a sectioning code that you can add, but footer specifies what's going to be on the bottom of the page. Okay, so yeah, I hope that makes sense. All right, so here's the header area, the footer area, and then just stuff in between. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much the header and footer. And also, you know, just like I said, it's not a requirement. This code is cool because you may have even had experience using this type of code to create characters. This is actually the code. There's many different codes for many different characters, but if you were to type this into your notepad, you would actually get the copyright symbol instead of what it actually has here. So if I do and copy and then semicolon, I do a save and then refresh. And this is actually part of the assignment to actually do this in the footer. Now we have a copyright symbol instead of this copy code. So that's kind of cool. Many different codes that you can look up to add, but might be fun, but not really necessary in this class. Just the copyright one. Okay, so basically, and always remember that the heading tags, now here it actually describes that there's heading 1 through heading 6, and you can even, you know, do the tags if you want. Actually, I can do H1, and if I just put H1 and save and refresh, you'll see that now it's going to be bigger, much bigger. Okay, but let's say you didn't want it that big, or let's say the second line, you wanted it to be H2. So you want it big, but not that big. So then we'll do save and refresh, and now it's not so big. And then of course you can just change the numbers so that it is, so it's changed, you know, different, whatever you prefer. So that is the heading tags. Remember, there's head, header, and those only have one set, which is head up on top, and then header. And now we're looking at heading tags, which is 1 through 6. Oh, and I also wanted to mention too that I know that things work, like when we had CSS here. I know it works. I know it goes on the page. I save and refresh, and there it is. But just because something works, always keep in mind that if something works does not mean that it's right. And I will take points off. So let's say we know that this should be a close HTML tag, but if I save and refresh, you can't tell the difference. You can't tell that it doesn't have the slash there, but I know, and I look at the code and I make sure that you have the slashes where you need them to be. So please be careful with that and double check your work. Okay. Okay, so we have the next section is the div and span. So it tells us a little bit more about the div. Now, something that we haven't covered yet is the paragraph tag. Now, I mentioned earlier that there is the BR, and that is something that you can use so that you can separate text for now. So I'm going to put a BR here, and also notice too that I have an open and close font tags here, and I put a BR inside. That's completely fine. And the reason why I did that is so that these different and the word text, both of that text are on separate lines. So if I do a save and then refresh, now we see different and text on 2 separate lines. Okay, so that's fine if you do that. And again, that's the old way, but you can totally do that. Another thing that you can do that's related to that would be paragraph tags. Paragraph tags, I'm just going to change this heading tag into a paragraph tag. What's cool about this is that it will separate the paragraph just like it would the BR. Now the BR really only gives you, just like if you pressed enter, but if you do a paragraph tags, and actually I don't want to do it here because it's not really going to show you the difference. If you use paragraph instead, let's look at the difference here. So I had a BR here, and it only went on the second line. What happens when I separate text by using the paragraph tags? And also notice that there is an open and a close. I save and refresh. See how it gives you much more space around? Now, earlier I put a BR after the word difference, so I put it on the next line, and that's cool. But with the paragraph, it actually has more space on top and it has space on the bottom. So just keep that in mind, that how many spaces there are. And yeah, you're going to use paragraph quite a bit. That is good code. It's not ode. We typically use that code. And I guess if you think about it, and let me just make this page a little bit bigger. If you think about it, now all of this could be in a div. Actually, this is kind of a bad page, I think, because these are just so many columns. That's interesting that W3C has it. But typically, maybe it's just because I don't know the content. I'm not really reading it. So you have a paragraph here. This most likely has the open and close tags around it. Now, so we have some space on top and we have some space on bottom. It does kind of look like there's a BR because there's not a lot of space, but keep in mind that with cascading style sheets, you can make a margin smaller. So you'd really have to look in the code to see what's going on there. But yeah, so when you have content and you want different paragraphs, you could use the paragraph tag. And this really doesn't give me what I'm really looking for. Yeah, it doesn't really give me what I'm looking for. So I can't really show you, but just know that you can have a div and then have paragraph tags inside of it, or even a footer. Because like, well, that's actually a good example. When you're looking at the footer here, or that's not it's not a good example either. Let's see. I know that you can't see the entire page, and that's fine. I just want to find a good example. And that wasn't a good example. Okay, here we go. So this web page here, you see how this is a section here, and it's separated by paragraphs, and you can tell because, you know, the period's here and then the next content starts on the next line. All of this could be in one div tag, but within that div tag, you have paragraphs. So if I were to copy and paste this text and then put it inside, let's say inside the footer. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this text. Unfortunately, it didn't give me any weird code. But now if I have all of this text here, see all of this is in the footer, and notice how, yes, there's a period here, and in the code we pressed enter, right? But you don't see any paragraph tags. You don't see, besides footer, you don't see anything that'll separate the content. There's no paragraph, there's no BR, it's just all the text. So if I went ahead and did the save and refresh, all of it will be bunched up together. See, so it's all bunched up together. But if I wanted inside the footer, I wanted there to be paragraphs inside, whoops, just P. And then at the end, and typically with paragraphs, you will probably see the same line, just like we did title. It's right, it's on the same line as the code. You don't have it on a separate line like that. It's completely fine if you do that. It's up to you. But if you're going to have it inside, of course, we need indentations. So these paragraph tags need to be indented, and then the content inside needs to be indented. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this where it says WCAG. So that's where, well, many of this, oh yeah. So that's where this is right here. It should be separated from the top sentence and the bottom part. So I'm going to go ahead and save and then refresh. And now we have it separated here. And notice how it looks good like that. They were 3 separate paragraphs, but just because it looks good just by putting paragraph tags around the middle one doesn't mean that it would be exactly right. I would actually recommend putting paragraph tags around all of them and be consistent too. So I'm putting a paragraph tag here, and then I'm putting the close here. You have to decide, well, are you going to have it on the same line like this, or are you going to put the paragraph tags on separate lines? You want to be consistent with the way you do it. Now it's on the same line as the content at the end. Okay, and then you would put the paragraph tags here as well, but I don't want to, so I'm just going to delete it, and boom, now it looks good. We save, and then we refresh, and now we have the 2 paragraphs. It looks exactly the same, but they actually are written correctly because they have paragraph tags. Notice that this should be indented. Oops, not deleted, just indented. that's interesting. Usually when you hit tab, it actually moves it in instead of deleting it, but it's actually deleting it. That's weird. There we go. I was highlighting it and pressing tab, but this time I just clicked right before it and hit tab and it indented. And that's actually another positive thing on using IDEs or the software to create stuff, is because if it wasn't that kind of program, you would actually have to indent each one of these lines individually, and that would be a lot of work. Okay, and anyway, yeah, okay, so this stuff is inside of the footer, so it needs to be indented. So anyway, I hope all of that made sense and I didn't go too long on that one. Okay, so that was div tags and headers and how you can separate content inside of other content using paragraph tags. And again, paragraph tags are good tags. They're not old where we don't use them anymore. Okay. Okay, so right here, it's important for you all to know divs and spans. Basically, those two tags, and they have open and closed tags, they're pretty much the same. The only thing different is that the div has a break line before and after it, or just before it, and the span will not. So let's go ahead and look at that. And, you know, there are still options to do code. And it's really just a matter of preference if you use div or span, but just know the difference between them. So I'm actually going to make this paragraph, instead of a paragraph tag, I'm going to make it into a div. And let's see what it looks like when we save and then we'll refresh. Okay, so I saved it with the divs, and this one has paragraph. So let's go ahead and refresh. And well, it doesn't look any different. Well, what happens if I use span tags in black? Span tags instead of the div tags. Now we save and then we refresh. And there's still no difference because this is a paragraph tag. Let me go ahead and get rid of that. So now we'll save and refresh. And notice how it's stuck together, because spans will not give you that extra space. So let me change it back to div and do save and refresh. And now it's separated by a line. So you can use either or, but just know the difference. And to tell you the truth, for this class, I would just stick with div tags, but just know the difference. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, something that's also important too is that, well, it does say that div and span are effective for styling, but, and know that this is an older textbook, like I mentioned before. So it says not everything is supported on all browsers. So I would say that, you know, probably it was less likely for things to work in all browsers, but at this time, you know, I would say that, well, everything that we do now is definitely going to be work in all browsers, but just be aware that it's not always the case. And at some point, there is a practice where you have to test your code in different common browsers. And, you know, just like any software that you create, or if you even think about it, you know, if you have an iPhone, you have to go to the App Store to get apps that will be that you'll be able to use and download on your cell phone. But there are just some apps out there that you can't use with an iPhone, or the other way around. So But you definitely want, whatever web pages you create, you don't want to limit your audience. So you want to make sure that everything that you create will work with at least common browsers, Firefox, Chrome, uh, Edge, and there are other ones out there. So it's like, well, how many do you want to test it on? So anyway, just be aware of that issue. Okay, so in this code here, this is basically most of what we've already covered, or this is what we covered. You have your body tags, you have your header tags, and of course it's missing HTML and the head tags. But inside your body, there's a header. You can have different divisions, and then you can have the footer inside of that. So those are all the different sections that you can have in your web page. Of course, none of them are required other than, of course, the body tag. But anything inside of there, none of it's required, but just helpful for you to know, and definitely will be useful in this class. So, and also know that we're going to be doing attributes, but later on. At this point, this ID is really just giving a name for this div, because we have 3 different divs, and we might want this part of the page to look different than this one. So that's why there's different divs, but these are really just the names of the divs for now. We'll look at that more when we do cascading style sheets. And that is it for chapter 9.